It was a summer night on the island of Sodor, and all the engines had fallen asleep at Tim's sheds. Henry had just left to take the Flying Kipper, but on his way to the docks, he noticed heavy winds. I hope the wind doesn't prevent me from pulling the Flying Kipper or have another serious accident, said Henry. Henry could remember the first accident when he first pulled the Flying Kipper. His body was destroyed and he had to go to work for a long time. By the time Henry got to the docks, the wind was howling. He backed up to the Flying Kipper and was very relieved when Salty chimed in. You might want to be taking fast routes today, me hearty. The storm be very dangerous this time of year. Thank you, Salty, said Henry, but I would prefer if you get to safety. Of course, me hearty, I be leaving now. Henry gave a long whistle and he set off with the heavy train. Henry knew he would have to be very careful. A little while later, Henry had puffed in efforts headed to Wellsworth. As soon as he reached Wellsworth Station, the station master flagged him down vigorously. Henry came to a stop and was told by the station master, Henry, I want you to go back to Nefford immediately. This is a tropical storm headed our way, and I do not want any engines on the railway right now. Do you understand? Yes, sir, said Henry. Henry was uncoupled from the Flying Kipper and he headed towards Nefford immediately. At Nefford Station, it was already a mess. Henry had puffed to a stop and he was ready to fall asleep. Just then a car flew by his face. Cinders and ashes, Henry. How am I going to get to sleep in this wind? He eventually dozed off, but in the morning, he was woken up by Harvey cleaning up this mess. Cinders and ashes. I thought it was bad last night, but it's worse in the daylight. That is correct, said Harvey. Good morning. Do you think you can help me clean up this mess? Asked Harvey. I can, for sure, but we're just going to need more help than me, said Henry. We can help, said Thomas and James as they puffed towards Nefford. Harvey smiled and immediately got to work with Thomas, James, and Henry. A few hours later, Henry was leaving Nefford Station with the express with workmen to go to his forest. Not long later, he arrived at his forest with Donald and Douglas waiting for him with some trees. Hello, everyone, he said. Oi, Henry, we got some trees for you to plant. Let's get to work. It's gonna be a long day today, said Douglas. Thank you guys for the help, said Henry. Meanwhile, Duck raced down Gordon's Hill to Nefford Station. Everyone, said Duck quickly. There's a big emergency. Inspector, in my coach. Calm down, Duck, said Mavis. Breathe and tell us what's the problem. The inspector's here in the coach I'm pulling. We need to find Sir Topham Hatt. Oh, what are we going to do? The island just came out of a big storm and we're still cleaning up after this mess. What are we going to do? Said Duck frantically. First of all, we need to calm down. Sir Topham Hatt said he'd be here in a few minutes. We just gotta be patient and wait for Sir Topham Hatt. Sir Topham Hatt, said a voice. I am the railway inspector. Where is your controller? Just then, Winston pulled in and came to a screeching stop. Did someone call my name? Mr. Inspector, this is a terrible time. The island of Sodor just came out of a big storm. I think we should reschedule for a later date. Nope, I need to be here and now. Come on, let's get an engine to take us around the island. I know about the storm, but the inspection is all what matters. Sir Topham Hatt and the inspector climbed aboard and Duck set off. Sir Topham Hatt was trying to convince the inspector to come back another day, but the inspector was telling him to be patient. Meanwhile, Thomas was at Elsbridge waiting for the conductor to blow his whistle so he could take his load of cargo. Just then, Duck came running down the hill, and he came to a screeching halt just in front of Thomas. Hey, Duck, said Thomas, you're normally not in such a big rush today. What's the matter? Nothing, Thomas. I'm just pulling Sir Topham Hatt, and the inspector and Sir Topham Hatt stepped out. Mr. Inspector, said Sir Topham Hatt, I'd like to advise again. I know Topham. The island of Sodor had just come in a big storm, but that's not the reason why I'm here. I'm not expecting that. Thomas, can you please move out of the way so we can get on with our tour? Yes, sir, said Thomas. Thomas immediately was glad to move out of the way for the inspector and Sir Topham Hatt, so Duck could get on his way. Duck set off and tried to complete the tour, and he headed to Tidmouth. A few minutes later, they arrived at Tidmouth, where Duck stopped to take a rest. Just then he heard a familiar voice. "Hello, Duck," said Henry. "Do you need help?" He asked. "I'm doing good," said Duck. "I just have to take the inspector and Sir Topham Hatt to Nafford Station, and then I'm done for the day." "Well, if you don't mind, I don't mind finishing the trip for you. It'd be good to stretch my wheels after sitting here for a while." Just then Sir Topham Hatt and the inspector stepped out of the coach. The inspector started looking around. Sir Topham Hatt watched him as he looked around and was writing stuff on his clipboard impatiently. "Well, I think we're done here now," said the inspector. "I can take you guys the rest of the way," said Henry. "It'd be nice to stretch my wheels after staying here with the workmen for a while." The inspector and Sir Topham Hatt looked at each other. "Thank you, Henry," and they took the offer. They hopped aboard Henry's coaches and he set off. A little while later, they arrived at Nafford Station where some other engines were at. Henry puffed in and came to a halt. Just then, Sir Topham Hatt and the inspector hopped out of the coaches. "Mr. Inspector, can you please tell me why you did this inspection of all today?" "Well, Topham, now I will reveal why I was here. This was never about how clean the island was. This was about how you guys could handle working after a storm, how you guys cleaned up. And I'm proud to pronounce that Sodor got an A for the effort they put in. You guys worked really hard and you had nothing stop you. And I'm very impressed. This Sodor is one of the few places that did this well. But now I must be off. Henry, if you can please take me to the docks for my boat, that'll be great." Henry left with the inspector while the engines blew whistles by. They were very happy of how well they did.